One, we are on. Jimi Hocking, hello.
Hi there.
Welcome, sir.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for driving up from your southern mansion.
My mansion.
In the snow and sleet and
all the way down the Mornington
stuff.
Peninsula.
Do you like it down there?
I love it.
Nice
down
life.
there. We're halfway down there. We're close to Mornington area now.
Right.
And so it's not all the way down the coast. It's not all the way in. It's
Yes.
sort of nice.
Yep.
So
Cool.
good for the young family, etc.
And how's your family?
Great.
You have...
I have two boys.
Your first boy is the same age as my daughter? Is
Yeah,
that
they're
right?
pretty close, I think. He's 3.5.
Is
Yeah.
it? Okay, he's a little bit older.
And our little one, he's a baby still. He's 13 months.
Okay.
So he's about to start walking.
Yep.
So life's busy, as I'm
Yes.
sure you will understand.
Yes, that's cool, man.
Yeah, life's
Well,
great.
thanks for making the trip in. Welcome, folks, if you just tuned in. Michael Ray's on. Jimi has been around playing gigs and doing things for a long time.
Yikes.
In the scheme of life, well, it's a short time, but when did you start playing live?
I reckon my earliest gigs were around 1980.
1981,
yeah.
Wow.
So, but I started early in as much as I grew up in a musical household. Both my parents worked in music. My mum was a singer and did a lot of light opera and theatre, stuff like that. And my dad's the great maestro. He's a piano player, conductor, arranger. So I really took on the family business.
Yep.
And because of probably my dad's influence, who was very he's a musical minded person, writing scores and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time in the 70s in my last years of school going to recording sessions with my dad and going to gigs. He played with the Bill Hyde Trio when I was a kid, and lots of things like that on television, and I was always around hanging out with my dad's group. And so,
did you get to play with your?
No, I wouldn't have had the chops to play any of that stuff. But that's when my ears picked up my love of kind of old time standards and jazz and even blues to a degree, which wasn't my dad's scene, but it was kind of like a sister to that all. But of course, I was a kid. I heard AC/DC and Status Quo and Devo and Frank Zappa. So the damage was done there. I wanted to do all that stuff, but eventually, when I started playing other styles, I could refer back to those early outings and have a sense of how things should sound, So I thought that was important. But because Dad was a muso, literally the minute I had a band together or something going on,
he'd be
it was
helping
like,
you out and
we'll go out and do something. So
Okay.
that's what happened, yeah.
So you're sort of from that school of live performance, got to get out and got to do it.
Yeah, I think that, especially in the scheme of being a guitar player, in the early 80s, many people will remember, but in the grand scheme of things, it was the new wave music was very big, and there was, to be a rock guitar player was almost to be like heavy metal compared to the world of pop new wave that was happening. So I liked Thin Lizzy and Angus and Gary Moore and Queen, all these acts, and that was considered quite heavy in a way compared to the climate of like listening to the Cars or they're great bands, of course, but I'm just putting it in a perspective of where it was. So I was a bit of a misfit because I liked that heavy stuff, but wanted to do it in a sort of the pub setting was like the pop setting of the day in some ways. But I had this head full of other stuff. I fancied myself as Frank Zappa. I fancied, I wrote these difficult things, and a lot of musos liked my early bands, but the public didn't.
So the Astros?
Yeah, so that's right.
Okay.
So early on, I played guitar in bands with a friend of mine, Jim Young. He's a great man, and he had a great pop sensitivity, and I was just a guitar player in those bands. Yeah. But when I started to write my own stuff, it was kind of a bit left, I think, and eventually the Astros evolved in Astroboys was the original band. We turned into the Astros with a different lineup, and that was more kind of music centric. It was a bit, these elements of jazzy lines and weird times and stuff had come into it.
Did your dad help you with learning any theory, or did you start with some lessons, or did you just you were born with a great ear and you? A little bit of
questionable. A bit of column A, a bit of column B, because Dad's a piano player, so as kids we all went off to piano lessons.
Right.
So straight away we were sent off the old-fashioned way, which is the middle C. Here it is.
Yeah.
So we learned to read some as kids.
Yeah.
Clearly, it wasn't the path that was for me, but I still had that foundation.
Yeah.
And we could all play the piano, all through our young life. And when I saw the Beatles on TV, that was when I wanted to play the guitar.
Right.
I was pretty young, and the good thing about my upbringing was there was no resistance.
Yep.
Like it wasn't like, oh, you need a real job or any of that stuff. It was all okay to do that.
That's pretty good.
So that was really a great thing. And Dad, I think really my dad came into it with the theory and stuff like that when I actually evolved enough that I was asking questions.
Yeah.
So instead of being like sit down and now this is the cycle of fifths or something like that, I was just that banging away as a self-taught guitar player for many years until I actually would be having coffee with my dad and saying, how do I do this? Or what does this mean? Or I'm reading this thing, or what does it mean? Did
you get a guitar lesson and someone showed you like the cage system or any scales, or you figured that out? And
not until later on. I was a late bloomer when it came to all the technical knowledge.
Yeah.
People don't realise that about me because I think people in rock music think I'm a bit too clever sometimes in some respects.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, I was just an ear player for a long time until I actually just wanted to explore new things.
Yeah.
And I also, because of my parents' lineage, I got thrown into some gigs where I needed more than just a pentatonic minor scale.
Yes.
I had to play other things.
Yeah.
And I got thrown into the deep end of some reading gigs, which
Right.
I could not sight read. I mean, I could fudge my way through some basic reading.
Chord charts.
I was reading the chord chart.
Yeah.
And those things scared me into a condition where I really just wanted to find out. I needed to know a little bit more. I played in Chelsea Brown's band one night when I was about 19.
Right.
That was a reading gig, and I fudged my way through it. And these are kind of jazzy charts.
Yeah.
And the same thing years later, I played for a bunch of different people in the same way. The Coasters came out from the US. They were a doo-wop band from the 60s. I played in their band I was young. I was early 20s maybe.
Wow.
But they were all just chord charts. And anytime there was notes, I was pretty much pretending I was reading them.
Yeah.
But because they were kind of rock and roll songs and stuff like that, I could kind of get away with that.
Yeah.
Later on, that wasn't going to be the case, and so I just had to learn how to be really good by ear and play in major keys and things like that, which rock and roll doesn't always kind of teach you.
Yeah.
Certainly blues doesn't.
So in terms of, like if I play something in C major,
Yeah.
like I know C major, or if I picked a minor key or that sort of stuff you're good with?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
all that.
I mean, the thing is, and I say, because I teach myself now, and I think you should be able to play in any key.
Yeah.
I think I've met a lot of young guitar players, well, not young guitar, any guitar players for that matter, who play a game of join the dots. And if they're not playing on the dots, they run into psychological trouble. They can't visualise the shapes they want to use because it's in B flat, say, and so it looks different to them if it was in A or B. And that's, to me, is a pitfall. I'm not the expert. These are my opinions.
Yes.
But I think that I remember having an experience where I was playing in a thing, and I'd never worked with brass players before.
Yeah.
So everything was in B flat and E flat.
Yeah.
So you had to be able to play in E flat, which is not a great key for the guitar, especially.
No.
And not only did you have to be able to play in E flat, you had to be able to play good in E flat. So I realised step by step that if I wanted to really make a living out of this beyond playing rock bands and doing my own thing, if I want to have a career outside of that, I had to have a bit more knowledge than some Chuck Berry licks and a blues scale.
No, I have plenty of questions about this sort of stuff, but before I do that, and I always get people tuning in, play something, damn it. What are you holding in your hands, Jimmy?
So I just for fun, I decided to bring this in. Anyone who may have seen my career over the years will recognise this guitar perhaps from the Jimi the Human days, which was the late 80s into the early 90s. There was a record that we made, No Turning Back, and I think that was 89, 1990s, before the Screaming Jets.
Yep.
And this, of course, is the guitar that I played on that record.
Yep.
And on the early Screaming Jets records I worked on. and pretty much every record that ever comes along, this would be in the arsenal
and
of
it's,
things.
you said to me earlier, it's a 73.
73.
Okay. And it was a deluxe.
I bought it as it had already been converted when I got the guitar.
Right.
So it had a set of Seymours in it, which sounded pretty good actually.
Yep.
Good pickups.
Yep.
But over the years, I've acquired some vintage pickups. So I used to have a set of real PAFs from the late 50s. This is one of them.
Wow.
So that would be perhaps a 59 PAF.
Lovely.
That's the real thing. And I had a Seymour in there for the longest time, but a little while ago I met a great guy online.
Yes.
And he has a little stock of T-tops from the 70s.
Right.
So that's a Gibson pickup from they call them T-tops.
Yep.
Because in the moulding they have a little T for the people at home. So they're not hot pickups by any chance, but they're kind of underwound. They might be 7.5, 7.6 thereabouts.
Isn't that interesting? A lot of those classic guitars, classic pickups, they're low output pickups.
Right.
People don't realise that.
No, it's a big. And when Slash came out, I recall with his Seymour Duncan custom set, a lot of the hard rock crew didn't like them because they were actually underwound. They weren't hot pickups at all.
Yeah.
They were like a set of old PAFs with a bit more dirt in the mid-range.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a thing, and
not everybody is Zach Wilde with high output EMGs.
There's a place to. I mean, there's a place for everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like but when it comes to that, the sound that I like is got a bit more transparency, and even if it's dirty, I still want to hear the harmonics.
Yeah.
And I find if the pickup's too hot, I just get too much mid-range sort of like strength, and it wipes out the transparency that I'm looking for.
If I play a shuffle in E, could we hear that lovely guitar?
Yeah, so we hear it clean and then dirty as well. A little bit
Sure.
So
I'll just try and keep the volume.
okay.
Sweet, lovely.
So
I love that neck.
I'm leaning on that pickup. I'm leaning on that pickup, and I mean when I started playing in the early '80s, everybody was playing. The single pickup guitar was becoming popular,
right?
And even though I played a melody maker and a junior early on, I got the soft spot for juniors. I actually wanted to sound different to all that, and so I really started getting into playing on the neck pickup.
Yep.
In the Astros, especially, that was when it all started for me.
Yep.
So that was, so I still go there, and even now when I run it in the Jets for the dirty sounds, which you would think would be just down here on this pickup. Well, that's whatever it is.
It's great.
All that business.
Yep.
More often than not, I actually play in the middle position.
Yep.
And I wind down the neck pickup.
Okay.
So I always have it on a little bit. So,
so just to give you that interesting sort of blend.
Yeah. So it's got the sharpness of the back pickup, but with just a little bit of overtone to it. So as opposed to being, it's just got a bit more. I wind in a bit more how I need it. Sorry, I'm banging away, but that's kind of how I do it often now on a Les Paul. That's like a go-to thing that I want with a two humbucking guitar.
Yep. I have a request. Can you show me Helping Hand?
Helping Hand, yes. Well,
sorry, folks. I'm being selfish here. It's a Jimmy lesson for me. So
I'm just moving this around here. Is this all right?
Crunchy. That should be okay.
Sorry, gang. Sorry about that. I came into the band in '93, and that was the first single. And actually, I didn't play on the single version of that tune. I think I played on subsequent re-recordings that we did.
Right.
That sounds correct. Anyway, I can't remember.
Yep.
But so Warmo played the kind of jazzy part, you know. That
cool.
stuff.
That's great.
And it's a great little lick actually. So he's kind of just playing. It's like an A minor triad there. It goes down to the G.
Like a triad.
Yeah. Then a D minor shape there. Opening up to the E. There's a D there. Does an F, slides from an F to a G there. So,
right.
So, yeah. I would play it.
That's cool. That's sweet.
Of course, it's a C.
Oh, hey, that's a great trick. I like that little trick you're doing there with the C.
Oh yeah,
Switching to the
so I'm playing the. Yeah, that's the little
Right.
thing that I do.
That's very cool.
I actually do that a lot when I'm sort of aping the sound of a guitar that might be in open tuning, but it's not.
Yep.
So I do it off in G if I'm playing a blues in G, and I'll play.
Oh yeah.
And I'll add a little thing that, like, if you hear that dum dum oh.
It's almost like a chicken picking sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's great. If you're wondering what Jimmy's playing through, because I get these questions all the time, what's he playing through? It's a Fender Blues Junior. It's an original. It's
nice
an
one.
American one. Yeah, it's a 91. Yeah. We dated that recently, so
91.
91. Hello everyone watching. David, Michael Ray, JC Gaff, Bryce Skidmore's on.
hi, Bryce.
Bryce does some gear.
Yeah.
Certainly does, knows his gear. So I have a question for you because and I get a lot of people coming in and asking me this all the time. It tends to be younger sort of guys, because as guys get older, like, I gotta slow down, man, take it easy. But it's always a speed question. It's like, how do I get fast? And I always say, well, that's probably not the best thing to aim for. But sometimes when I watch you play, like, it's lightning quick.
Well,
and I'm just, did that just come over time, or did you sit down and say, you know what, there's something by Eric Johnson I want to learn, or whatever, I'm gonna sit and learn that?
The answer to this question will disappoint hard rock fans, but
Prepare to
I
be
worked on it.
disappointed.
It was something I worked on, but I must say, in recent years, I've had a little bit of RSI, I've had stuff like that. So I remember saying to Steve James, our producer, a couple of years ago, I said, I'm looking more towards trying to play more in the Paul Kosky field than the Gary Moore, lightning thing. Yeah. But because I grew up in the 80s, it was era appropriate for a guitar player to play that way. It was part of the voice of the rock guitar in that period. And my contemporaries, somebody mentioned Bob Spencer and people like that before we went on air, great guitar player, and he grew up, obviously playing through the 70s.
Yes.
So his era appropriate guitar examples were more melodic, more vibrato, that kind of thing. And because I cut my teeth from 1980 onwards, the Van Halen records were already out there. This is what was happening. So I was not only exposed to it, in a way, I was expected to be part of that culture as a young up-and-coming guy. That was the voice of the guitar.
I remember when Surfing with the Alien came out, and I bought that on vinyl. As soon as I heard a track, I heard Always.
It's a great record.
That's amazing. It's still great.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it. And I hadn't really listened to Holdsworth or anything before, and that playing and that fluid sort of legato sort of playing was amazing. And I was reading on your bio that you met Joe Satriani or toured with Joe Satriani?
I toured with Joe Satriani. Right. I was the opening act on his first Australian tour, on his first world tour when he came to Australia.
When he had the bodysuit and the power mullet sort of...
No. So he still had hair. He was still a guy with hair.
Yes.
And Joe had Stu Ham on bass, They
Yes.
came as a three-piece, and I can't recall the drummer's name. I'm sorry about that because he was fantastic.
Yep.
And they were very nice. Joe was a very nice dude. We sat down and had lunch most days on
Yep.
the tour together with
Yep.
catering. He was very quiet. He was quite a shy guy, and I got the feeling that he'd come straight out of a situation where he was kind of like teaching and doing sessions and doing local gigs to the world stage overnight.
Yeah.
And that's a big transition. But we talked about guitars and playing and stuff, and I enjoyed that tour very much, even though we drove a lot of miles.
Yep.
But I was going to say, just going back a little bit,
Yes.
that the speed thing that I wanted to do, first of all, the answer to the young girl's question is you've got to practice slow and even to be fast.
Yeah.
And if you turn on the distortion, get yourself a heavy metal pedal and start, you know,
Yep.
I mean, it's going to take you a lot longer to
Yeah.
get those chops down than
Yeah.
if you sit down with a clean guitar
Yeah.
and actually work on correct picking technique.
Yes.
Down, up, down, up, down, up.
So if we take, is it like a basic minor pentatonic scale or something?
Well, even before I get that, here's what I
Yeah.
would be telling a young student to practice. So even before I start playing a scale, I would say
Yeah.
pick any note, it doesn't even matter what it is. So let's play an E in the
Yeah.
middle of our guitar. We get a mental metronome going, and the exercise is to play single notes and then doubles,
Yeah.
quads. So it sounds like this. It's like, so I'll be like here. I'm up, down, all the time, right? That's down, up, then double. I play a triple, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, then 4. Then start again. Wow. So quick we'll sound like the singles, double. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, then 4. I'm adding the accent now too.
I'm surprised your guns aren't out to here.
So that's just to get the idea of not only the motion, but something I'm very much into, which is the pick angle. So the actual angle of where your plectrum strikes the string.
Yep.
If it's too sideways,
Yep.
you get a washier sound.
Yep.
You might want that, but that's what's going to happen.
ZZ Top sort of thing.
No, it's just
Right.
I'm doing it now. And as I turn the pick more flat,
Yeah.
it actually
So when you
becomes
hold
more articulate.
your pick, you've got the big end and the small end. You're using the small end.
I'm using the
play.
small end, and I'm
Yep.
using a fraction of the small end.
Okay.
I go
that's
through
it.
2 picks a night because I use such a small amount of the pick on the
Right.
string.
Yeah.
My finger literally scrapes the string every time I hit the guitar.
Right.
So I wear that nail down and break it often.
Yeah.
But it's got to do with working out the economy of the motion of it.
Do you anchor your right hand?
I have 2 different versions of that picking technique.
Yeah.
One is to anchor the hand here, like as if I'm palm muting that way.
Yep.
The other way is to anchor it with my fingers up there,
Right. Okay.
which is more like when I play the acoustic, or just sort of lie the back of my hand in there. But
Yep.
I need an anchor point usually to play that kind of speed.
Yeah.
But as I say, it's not something I practice so much anymore. I did back in the day, and same with all all that stuff.
Bit
That
of
was
tapping.
the thing. I'm still people say
You got to do it.
It was the period,
Was
And,
that? Did you do tapping on your first
yeah,
little
I
bit? And
did all that.
Jimi the Human era, a tapper.
Indeed. I was a tapper. So I mean, I rarely do it now. That's actually not true. I did on the last Jets record, but it's kind of more like an effect now than anything else.
Yeah.
And I was going to say playing fast is kind of like an effect too.
Yeah.
So instead of it being, I like more lyrical playing now, which is a bit more melodic.
Yeah.
But the fast thing is sometimes to create a sense of light and shade. You might go fast into a phrase and then play a melody.
Yeah.
If you're playing fast all night, well, it sort of goes unnoticed in the end because you're just doing it all the time.
Yeah.
If you mix it up, light and shade is your great asset.
Yeah.
Playing quieter, playing soft, louder, playing busy, playing not so busy, playing tight, playing loose.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of obvious, and everyone I ever speak to about this goes, "Oh yeah." But then when I go and see people play, I don't see it so much.
Yes.
People talk about it more than they do it.
Do you listen when you listen to music and when you were growing up listening to music, were you listening to lots of other instruments, sax and trumpet and that sort of thing, or was it guitar focus? And
it would make me sound better if I said yes, but the reality is no.
No,
I fell in love with the guitar. I was so completely besotted with the instrument and the way it sounded that as a young guy, I just wanted to hear guitar music because.
Who were your heroes? Who did you listen to?
Well, it started with just pop music and stuff on the radio. Yeah. But I heard a lot of jazz guys as I grew up. Dad took me to see Barney Kessel, Herb Ellis.
You saw Barney Kessel?
Saw him play in Melbourne.
Wow.
At the Pink Vic. They played.
I love Barney Kessel's...
I know, right? Oh, yes, nice.
Cry Me a River or whatever it is. I love that.
But I mean, I didn't sit down and study those guys. I just kind of saw what they could do, and I saw the possibilities of how they could play. And some of the records we had at home ranged from, Chuck Berry records, who I love, to the Les Paul Trio records. And Les Paul as a guitar player, so forget the story of him with the guitar and the solid body and the rest of it. Les Paul himself as a guitar player was one of my biggest influences as a kid. So, and I was going to say, the fast guitar playing thing came from Les Paul.
Right,
It didn't come from some rock notion. It came from things I heard Les do. I didn't really know what he was doing. I didn't have theory chops or anything going on like that. But he would, he'd be doing, doing all those, all that stuff he would do, and I'd be like, what is that, And the way he could make the guitar sing, it's all snappy, all that stuff he would do. It's that one lick I'm trying to find where it goes, But anyway, all that crazy stuff he would do, I didn't know what it was. I still can't play. I haven't really sat down and practiced it, but that was where I heard this kind of thing that somebody was doing, and of course he was trying to be Django. He was doing the Django lines, but in a kind of jazz trio. And then I listened to it. I didn't work them out, but I thought that's how you get some real action happening on the guitar. So I had the distortion pedal on, and I was trying to do them on the guitar. Whether I did them or not, I mean, they're kind of sloppy, but the thing would be that's the effect I was trying to get going. That was all from those Les Paul records. And when I heard Gary Moore or Stevie Ray Vaughan, I saw play in the early 80s, people like that, he was quite different again. When I heard them all playing fast, my mental reference was still something about those muted picks. That Les would do. Anyway, that was the.
It's almost a John McLaughlin sort of thing as well. Those really fast pentatonic runs he does. So
I didn't listen to any of that stuff till heaps later. Right. It was born of the fact that we had those records at home. And he's a guitar player. Les Paul. Yeah, there you go. Les Paul. So I heard that stuff, and but later on I didn't want to be like a jazz guy. I wanted to be like a rock guy, and so it translated in its own way to whatever I was doing. But I mean, I love Brian May. I love Queen. I'm a huge Brian May fan, but when I saw Stevie Ray and people like that, when I first saw them play, that was when I really got into the blues for real. Hendrix wasn't my ground zero for that stuff. Right. That came later. But I would see Kevin Borich play. He would be playing the local scene when I was coming up through it.
The Australian Kevin Borich.
The Australian Kevin Borich. And the same with Cole
I always get in trouble with it.
Yeah, right. but they became my local heroes because they were guys I saw do that thing. Marshall Stacks and Strat. And but we had a lot of great guitar players on the scene who I would see even in the studio, Tony Naylor, people like that, And I loved watching all those guys as I grew up because they were really present examples. They weren't like guys on records and they were kind of here and now. And
you just missed John Dallimore was here literally 30 seconds ago. He said to say hi, by the way.
Well,
but,
hi to John. He's a great
Tony Naylor comes in occasionally.
Does
as
he?
well.
Yeah. So,
he's a lovely guy.
He did a lot of sessions with my dad when I was a kid. So,
right.
So I remember, being in the studio and watching those guys. And,
on his original 61
That's
Strat
stripey,
or something.
The stripey guitar?
I think so, yeah. He's got... he was up here, I think he was in the Brian Cadd band or something.
Yeah, he was.
That's
right, that would be him.
Corner, so...
But there's, there's many great guitar players who were playing in the late 70s and the early 80s still as I was coming into the scene.
Yeah.
But they weren't necessarily doing like, say what Stevie did, which is like a 3-piece rock blues thing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, when I saw him do it, KB had kind of done something similar.
Yep.
But seeing Stevie come out and do Scuttle Butler and stuff like that.
It's amazing.
Like it was legit, it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
And
I when Couldn't Stand the Weather came out in the 80s again. I bought that on vinyl straight away. It was another mind blowing record for me.
That was the same. I mean, he played the concert hall in Melbourne about '84, I think it might have been. So, and we discovered him through Guitar Player magazine. He kind of wasn't like a big deal yet. Sort of.
I knew he'd done the session for Bowie on the Let's Dance.
And I
thought that's great guitar playing, and who was that guy? And then there you go. Out of that he came. Jimmy, can I ask? So
yes,
you got a bit of a
sorry everyone. I just started.
It's great. Makes my job easy. I should just sit back and relax. So you've got a jazz and blues sort of background, really.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a jazzer because I know it's involved to be a great jazzer, and I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
But I do
there,
have a strong interest in the genre.
Yeah.
Not all the really crazy stuff, but I mean I like the wump guitar, like the. Yeah. I love the way those things sit in a bar. There's something about that. So I heard a lot of that stuff growing up. So it's just a thing with me. But the blues thing too. I mean, I love.
So the transition back to blues, because you were kind of Oz rock guy, and then bang, you made the switch back to blues. Why did you? I mean, it was just a natural thing. It's like, look, this is what I always wanted to do, and I'm just going to do it. Or
that was part of it. But if we cast our minds back to, I think my first blues album I did around '97, which is when I left '98, when I left the Jets for a few years in the middle there, and I kind of had been in the world of the Screaming Jets. We were very much looking for radio-friendly songs and stuff like that. It's part of the conditioning that you come to be because you're working with the record companies and you're working for an outcome and you owe money and you've got to make it work. So so I was kind of tired of that in a way, and doing a blues thing was just kind of like a self-indulgent thing.
Yeah.
I didn't think for a minute that I'd be doing it for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a thing I would do because I just wanted to do it. So as you say, yes. But there was no real strong blues scene at that time. So the Blues Society hadn't really formed. Well, maybe they formed around that time, and there was no blues gigs per se. If you were a blues band, you might be playing a pub somewhere, and it just happened to be that kind of band.
Yeah.
But there was nowhere to represent that thing. And I love B.B. King. I love T-Bone Walker. This is kind of like.
I saw you got to meet BB.
Well, I met B.B. King. It's a famous moment in my life now. But the voice of those guys, and how they make the guitar, their voice, like how it sings, and T-Bone, who to my ears, he brought jazz into the blues, with those chord turnarounds and stuff. And but I was going to say, when I started the blues band, my then manager, my partner, everybody just said to me, "You're crazy! Like, no one wants to hear that. Like it's, I mean, I had the band that I had at the time, who were kind of like looking to do another rock thing, and I brought in some blues things. Everybody just shook their head, and went, what's this, and so actually, when I made that first blues album, which is called Blue Guitar.
Lucky it wasn't jazz.
Yeah.
How do you make $1 million from jazz? You start with 2 million. Thank you. I'm here all week. Sorry.
But I had very little. I had so few people on my team about making a blues album. It was remarkable. But what happened was I just wanted to do it, and I'd been in a so-called commercial band. That's not a dirty word. That's just what we were doing, And so the fact that it kind of worked in its own way, and became a cottage industry, I suppose. But the fact that it took me to America, all the things that happened to me subsequently, traveling wise and winning an award in Memphis, it was all off the back of playing blues. It wasn't about my rock career. It was all this kind of cottage industry thing that I started.
And how'd you find hanging out in the US? I mean, home of the blues, really, and just a big market.
Well, I found it fantastic. In fact, I found much less of the what would be the word? The parameters that we put upon ourselves here in good old Australia about what we can and can't play. I found that to be much less in America. I'd be playing some blues gig in Manhattan where I was guesting in the band, and the guys who were playing at like the R&B or the rap club around the corner, they'd come in for a drink before their gig.
Right.
It wasn't like they're thinking, oh no, we only listen to what we do. No, we're going to see some blues before we go and do our thing. It was a very different,
inclusive sort of
more
scene,
inclusive, and to be accepted in the blues scene in America. In my experience, I could obviously play some, so that was a foot in the door straight away. But all I had to do was kind of like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had to pass some kind of weird test. Well, do you know Charlie Patton's wife's name? There was none of that.
Secret password.
Yeah, it was just like, what are you doing here? I'm here because I came out because I wanted to see some blues, and like, you like blues? Come on, man! And like, that was it.
Yep.
So
could you have stayed there?
Yeah, I could have. And the reason I didn't was because I'd gone later in life. I was in my 40s when it was starting to really work.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I had no family, I had no wife, I had none of these things. I'd spent my whole life couch surfing and living the rock and roll dream and touring. And I actually showed with Dave Hull in the States.
Oh, right, wow.
Yeah, we met up while we were over there.
Great slide playing.
Fantastic, but I kind of thought, I really want to do this, but I wish I had been 24 when I came over here, because then that would be the end of me. I would have just stayed. And I got offered a gig in New York, like a Friday night gig at Terror Blues. It was a great jumping club there, would be packed. But the thing about doing that would be that'd be it. I'd have to keep my gig in New York. I'd have to stay there always, and always do the gig on a Friday. So no touring anywhere else, because I'd have to be there for Friday night's gig. And there were limitations to the idea, which at 40 something, I was starting to think, I love it, but I really need to also have a more balanced life than what seems to be on the platter right now.
That's an expensive town as well. I mean, it's
That's an expensive town,
Man, now Jimmy, you've got quite a few records out. The Screaming Jets had a record out recently called Chrome, which went to number 2 in the charts.
That's right.
Most people don't know that, you were saying, but it did.
The charts are confusing now, but I know that the Australian album charts, we were number 2 there. Sia was number 1, we were number 2. So by all, old school language, the album has been a great success for us.
And touring on the back of that album. I mean, I sort of follow you on Facebook, and you were doing some massive gigs up in northern Queensland and all over Australia. How did that go?
They went great. I mean, the band has been enjoying a renewed experience in many ways. We're older and wiser. We've had some lineup changes, but this lineup, I think, we've got Marky's come in as our new drummer. But before that, I came back 9 years ago, perhaps, and we worked ourselves out of some of the debts and things that were a problem for the band before that. I'm talking a bit out of school here, but we found ourselves in a much better emotional place.
Yeah.
Which in a band is important. It's like a marriage.
So you weren't in the original band.
No.
You were brought in.
I came in. The original lineup lasted 3 or maybe a little bit less years. So I came into the band in '93. They'd recorded the first 2 albums. I came in while the second album was about to be toured.
Yeah.
The second album was called Tear of Thought, and it was not a success yet.
Yeah.
We'd sold very little of Tear of Thought in Australia.
Was their first?
The first album was called All for One.
Was that
with Better?
Right. So that was a big hit.
Big hit, great success. And then almost immediately the band went to America after that, after some Australian tours, to seek further. That was what you did in those days. But as Dave says, the wheels kind of started to fall off in America, and they lost a drummer, and then Richie, the original guitar player, became ill, and Chuggy rang me and said, "Listen, will you do the next Australian tour with this band when they come home, 3 weeks?"
Yeah.
And Richie was going to come back, as far as I knew, and so I did. My original reaction was like, maybe I wouldn't fit in. I was kind of like vegetarian guy,
You're not a drinker either.
Oh, I'll have a night every now and then, but not as a rule.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I came into it, and within a very short period of time, David and I discovered we had a very similar sense of humour, and we were pretty good company. And the short version is that I stayed till the end of the '90s. So Richie just never came back, and he went off and did a stint with the Choir Boys, and he didn't fancy it. So I just became the guitar player in the band.
Yeah.
So when people talk about the original lineup, I understand the romance they have for that, because it was a great band, but it was really around a very short time. In the grand scheme of things, because the last year I think it was in America, so maybe 2 years or so that actually played locally, and then that was over. And then I came in and did the next 2 albums, and when I left, Izzy Osmanovic, another great guitar man, he came into it, but he was still playing what I'd recorded on the previous album.
Right.
They might have done another record, Dance Scam, I think they did next, which almost brought us to the present day when I came back. Is that right? You better check me on this. And we did the Chrome record. Then we did a live DVD and an EP. And
heard a couple of tracks off Chrome that are a bit heavier.
Yeah.
So there's some heavy stuff on it.
So Paul is the main songwriter of the band. He's the bass player, Paul Rosine. He's a great songwriter. And he likes to write in drop D tuning quite a lot. So we do a lot of stuff in that tuning, which sounds heavy. Yeah. And
Soundgarden-y sort of chunk.
Sort of, but the way he uses it as in a very riffy way, and so that's so it's kind of more chunky. There's more movement to it, I think.
I was trying to play that riff off the song. You sent me a tune.
What did I send?
It's like.
Oh, that's in drop D.
That's in drop D.
So I
was struggling to do it.
My other guitar, I've got a Paul Reed Smith that I use in that band too, quite a lot, because of the drop D is part of the reason of the high tension.
Do anything?
I'm shuffling here. That's all right. I'll just put the old girl there on the throne. So, but I've got a couple of guitars I tour with. I've got a Yamaha 1802, which they made for me, which is a great guitar, and that's at home now, strung down, tuned at half step down, so I didn't bring that along.
So this one's in drop D at the moment?
This one, so it is now.
Yep.
So that riff, it's so you can see
that makes more sense.
It makes a lot more sense, There's
I love those chords.
The bits I put in there,
cool. Yeah.
So it's a great song, and he, it's just where he likes to write, sometimes.
Yeah.
And when it came to doing that record, we set him on the task of writing a bunch of new material. David and I had written a couple of things together, actually. I think one song made the album, But it was really just to get the ball rolling.
Yep.
And we'd always wanted Paul to write the body of the material because he's got the sound of him is kind of what the Jets sound identifies with.
Did you guys still, did the Jets still have a record deal, or they had to go back out and try and get another one, or they're doing it on their own? Or?
I think people don't realise, because of the commercial success of the band, for the most part of the Jets' career, we've been an independent band. So we've had deals. The first deal was with Ruart, so the INXS's record company, who were an independent record company in its day. There was another deal that got sold on, I think, to Sony, and I left the band around that same time. There was lots of changes there. But for the most part, all those records since then have been off our own bat with distribution deals. So we have a deal now with a great company called Dinner with Wolves, and they've been distributing the record, but essentially at the start of it, we've gone in and made a record with our own money. So I remember somebody banging onto us backstage about how we weren't indie or something, and I blew up about it because I'm like, you know what, this notion that you have to look a certain way to be indie is completely naive. You know, we were an indie band. You know, but because we didn't look all shoegazer.
Shoegazer. That's what you should start doing. You see, sell another million records.
We're doing it wrong.
I think that original song, Better, the first hit they had, was like a Triple J type staple of the time. That's my memory of it anyway. So
yeah, you might be right there. I mean,
I think they got that sort of, they were an indie sort of band the way they started. And
that's kind of the growth of the band. I mean, I knew the guys back then, in actual fact. So at the same time that I had my band Jimi the Human and Spectre 7, which is 88 or 89 to about 92. And I'd done the Angels tour. That was my other claim to fame. I filled in for Bob Spencer and the Angels.
We need to do a part 2. I want a part 2 where I find out about the...
So that's a whole other story.
You have to agree.
You know? So
see, if I get you to agree live, then you'll
I'm up for it. I love a chat.
Oh, thank you, sir.
So
come back soon.
But so we could talk about that period, you know. But in the Jimi the Human days, we were local legends in Melbourne. And so we would do good numbers ourselves. We had a top 20 album down here. So when the Screaming Jets first played interstate, on one of their first national tours, they opened for me. In Melbourne.
Wow.
So that's cool. So that's how we originally met, and then we had mutual friends. Ironically, through the Angels connection with Jim Hilburn, who was a bass player in the Angels and the Divinals. So he's a great man. I love that man. And through his household, where his partner Christine was a photographer who'd done some of the early Jets shots as well, there was a bit of a kind of rock and roll community of people, you know. And so it was, you know, my coming into the band was a little bit more organic than me being a complete stranger to the concepts. As for that matter, Dave's time in the Angels now as the lead singer, since Doc's not with us. I think people don't realise how organic that has been too, since we've been friends. Both camps have been friends for such a long time. So, you know, we have a circle of friends, I suppose, that we, like anyone, we all look to when it comes to what we can do.
When just quickly with the Angels, and I won't go because we'll definitely have to save it for part 2. But when the Angels had a bit of a resurgence in the 80s, I think they did an Animals cover and
that's right,
that sort of thing.
That was the Howling album, I believe.
Is that your era when you were there?
Just after that album. So I think. Once again, we could go on Wikipedia, but so 88 was I did one tour with the band, and that was really born of the fact that Bob Spencer, who was the guitar player in the band at that time with Rick Brewster, John had left the band, John Brewster. Bob had an accident on stage with Doc. As part of the shtick was that they were going to do this thing together where Doc would kick the box that Bob was standing on. It went pear-shaped and the box fell over. Bob fell down and broke his guitar and broke his wrist. It was not a good scene.
No, terrible.
And I got a call the next day because they'd rung around a few local studios to say who could do one gig with the Angels. And Paul Koski, another great man, I'd done some session work with him at Platinum Studios, and he said, get this young guy, Jimi Hocking, he can play a bunch of stuff. And so Brent Eccles, who was the drummer then, he rang me and said, is Brent from the Angels? I was pretty much like, yeah, sure it is, you know. He said, look, I don't have time to bullshit around.
Yeah.
You know, you need to come and tell me if you could do this gig or not,
Yeah.
basically. And I was young and cocky, and this has all been. This now I'm flattered to say that the Brewsters have put this all in the history book that they've just released in recent times. So there's a whole chapter about this. But you know, I went down and met the guys at the hotel, and we had a discussion about whether it was doable. What do you know? What don't you know? It was a long show, 3 sets.
Did you know a lot of the stuff?
I knew the early stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the recent stuff that was floating around on radio. There was a period in the middle where I just had no idea what the material was. Yeah. But I always knew that I'd really worked on being a good ear player.
Yeah. Pick it up.
I felt I had a strong musicality that I could hear things and knew what they were.
Yeah.
So
do you think you've got?
Doable.
I ask this question to everybody that comes in, thousands of people, Jimmy, and I always find. I mean, just hearing that story, and it's like so and so gave me a call, and that just sort of gives me the shivers. I'm like, oh, you know, I'd be so nervous.
Yeah.
So, but most people I know who play a lot live, they seem to have a confidence to do it, and nerves are not a problem. How do you find that?
I don't know that nerves are not a problem. There are many people in the music industry and probably in the entertainment industry who suffer from nerves, but have found a way to diffuse that issue by role playing or by something. And I think you need to be cocky. There's no doubt about it. And that's not in the negative way, but in a way that you have to be confident about what you can do.
Yeah.
And
I think people want to see that. So when they pay money and they want to be entertained, and
and no one wants to
see
feel
someone
nervous.
hiding behind a curtain.
I hope I can remember this song.
There's only so many Robert Fripps that can sit on a chair, and you know, most of the time people are like, I want to see the guy running around kicking legs in the air.
It's escapism from people. They want to see you go and rock out and have a good time and do something that they feel like they kind of wish they were doing, perhaps, or whatever. But I mean, I grew up in music, and we had sort of so-called famous people coming in and out of our doors through my whole young life. Yeah. So it wasn't that I was immune to the idea of meeting well-known people, but I had kind of processed it to a point where I could talk properly, you know, without you know, freaking out.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting there, I mean, I remember Rick pointing to me and saying, you know, it's possible, but they go, so play the riff from Long Line. You know.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's played like that.
But I actually had the Paul Smith. Yeah. So it's just a. You know,
that's awesome.
I mean, they're such great riffs. I mean, and of course,
classics.
in my young life, I'd learnt. I'm sure I played After the Rain in a cover band and No Secrets. You know, so I had an understanding. You know, I was a fan. I mean, I had those records, but where I'd started to then forge my own career, I wasn't buying as many of those kind of records at that time. So the middle stuff. I remember my personal disaster was a song called Watch the Red at the first gig, and it's a great tune, but it kind of has this... You know, it did this ascending thing, and I just didn't hear where it went at all, because it was the droning A string all the way through it. And that was a royal disaster on stage. I have a recording of that first gig, and I just can't listen to it without having an anxiety attack.
That late 80s?
Yeah, that was 88.
88, right.
So the tour was only, I don't even know, 2 months long, say. And in those days it was a driving tour. You didn't really fly many legs because you played in between capital cities. It was a big tour. You know, there was 2 nights at the Perth Entertainment Centre sold out. You know, I think they're 10,000 seaters.
Wow.
We did all the big rooms. Yeah. So I'd gone from being some kind of kid in a band where I was trying to be clever and all this stuff, to being just a straight down the line kind of rock and roll band with great songs. And you know, make no mistake, it was an eye opener for me. Like I learned a lot doing that tour about the possibilities that a kid like me probably had that I might be wasting by pursuing some artistic version of myself. Now that's once again that's going to come across a bit half baked because I encourage that as well. Yeah. But in the sense of what you could do in a commercial sense, as you know, coupled with that, I was focused only on the credibility side of what I was writing instead of like the bigger picture.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
It's a tough one if you're in the arts, you know. It's like.
Well, I could talk more about that to clarify what I'm trying to say because I'm not judging either path, but I'd spent already several years with this kind of complicated jazz rock thing that you know the record companies basically didn't want to touch because what will we do with you? Who's going to play you? You know.
Yeah, I sort of. I mean, I'm a Brisbane boy, and I remember Powderfinger coming up in Brisbane, and their first couple of records were Odd Time and strange sort of, you know, devil interval type riffs and whatever. It kind of went nowhere, you know. And then as soon as they sat down and said, "Well, look, we're going to think a little bit more commercial and we're going to write some proper songs," and boom, away they went. So
I think maybe the question is, and I'm just thinking on the fly here, is that you try to write songs that your contemporaries will be not impressed by, but like, you know, like you show them what your good works are, what you can do with your instrument now, and where you've evolved to as a musician. You want to bring that to your art, but the general public really just don't care about any of that stuff. It's you know, and it's not their fault. It's because their idea of music and what it does for them is different to my idea. Yeah. They don't want to hear me bang on about how much I like the Phrygian mode because they don't care. You know,
it's time for another jazz joke. If you play jazz, you get to play 10 chords to 3 people, but if you play rock, you get to play 3 chords to 10,000 people.
But you know what? Let's. I know it and I love it.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I think of jazz as, and you might appreciate this comparison. Sure. I think of jazz as the kung fu of guitar playing. So it teaches you complicated skills that have over taught you something that the simplicity of putting your hand through a board, you know, you could probably just do that. Yes. But you have all these other techniques that you could also call upon because you understand this greater picture, you know. Now, when it comes to jazz, and I say this in my book that I'll be producing in the future, you know, the blues style of playing.
We'll be selling that here.
The blues style of playing is usually playing the guitar or improvising over a single harmonic centre. So if I say to you, this song's in the key of E, like we were playing before, we're both playing an E, you know, so there I am playing basically an E major scale, right? Yep. Whereas the jazz way of approaching the guitar, for the most part, and I know there's going to be a jazz guy there shooting me down, but this is my perspective on it, is that they look at each chord or groups of chords as a different harmonic centre. Right. So a lot of the song structures are not 1, 4, 5 chords. Yeah. You know, they move around. You know, the bridges and things will change key, or as they say, modulate. Yeah. So you have to be able to play in several different keys throughout the song. Yeah. So if you master this idea of playing and changing harmonic centres, like the key of the song, mid-song, maybe several times throughout the song, once you start playing rock and blues, it's kind of a no-brainer because you're just playing in one key.
When you're playing over, say, an E blues, are you thinking chord changing for those chords?
We could have a long discussion about my concepts on this one because I
definitely need a part 2.
We do. I like music theory now. I've grown to enjoy back engineering things and seeing how they work, what their relationship is. I enjoy it. Yeah. Yes, I'm a nerd, but at the same token, once you start playing, you're not thinking in terms of science. Yeah. You're thinking in terms of what feels good and trying to put more emotion into your playing. But I refer to the scales and the ideas and notions of the theory as a scaffold.
Yeah.
If I've got a scaffold and I know where the next step is, I can step there.
Yeah.
If I don't know where the hell I'm stepping, I'm thinking about where am I going. Now, I don't want to think about that. So I want to think about playing good guitar. So I want to have the muscle memory or the mental memory of where these shapes and patterns lie, so that I can intuitively select then the notes on the fly to create my melodies.
Yep. Yep.
That's my argument for learning theory.
Yeah.
You know, then someone will come along and say, oh, well, John Lee Hooker didn't know any theory, and you know, Jimi Hendrix. Well, that's actually not true. Jimi Hendrix did know some theory, because I actually believe in a concept also, which I call practical theory, which is some people's ears will pick up the nuances and the harmonic relationships very well, and they'll, without knowing what this is, or that you've changed, that you've diminished this sixth to make this thing, or it's a major seventh in this minor scale.
Yeah. Their ears are good enough to make that change with the chords.
Their ears will understand that, and they'll go there. Yeah. So I suspect for every person that bangs on about, learning theory has no feel, blah 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 blah. I'm pretty much guaranteed they're not somebody who's making a living out of playing the guitar. Yeah. There's somebody who's having a lounge room argument. And some of those points might be valid in an alternate universe to mine. But in my universe, I play the guitar for a living, so I don't have the luxury of saying, "Hey, man, I you know what key your songs in. I'm just going to rip out some licks." Yeah. Well, what that's going to mean is I'm going to rip out some minor pentatonic licks.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Western music is so geared to hear that that my invisible education has been about those licks. And I can tell you that I go in the studio sometimes and have producers say to me, and I'm quoting, "Can you play me in this solo something other than that same old rock and roll
that's good
sound that I'm always hearing? Can you play me something else?"
Yeah.
And I say, "Sure, what about this?"
Yeah.
And they say, "Great." Whatever. Hopefully they say great. But that conversation happens. Yeah. So and further to that, obviously I'm a talker here. Further to that, I was giving a lesson the other day, and I was saying the example was Sweet Home Alabama.
Yes.
Not a song I play terribly often, but in the context of the song, there's two guitar solos, and they both look like, so the song's D, C, G. Well, one guitar player plays, to my ears, at a glance, he plays the solo in G major, So that's the first solo, and then the second soloist plays as well, but he plays in D Mixolydian.
Right.
So he plays the same. So he makes a meal out of that seventh. Yeah. Which is the D to the C. Yeah. So you don't want to play a major seventh. You want to hit that minor seventh, right?
Yeah.
And because he's playing in a different position, for the most part, a lot of them are the same notes. But because they're now grouped together in different series over each string, it sounds like a very different feel. Yeah. So the two soloists both feel very different. Yes. Based on a very simple piece of music theory.
Yeah. Well, both of those scales are so close.
Of course they are.
It's like one note.
But you can hear the position. Well, I hope I'm right when I say it, but that's how I hear the position change. Because one he plays that seventh, and the other one is more in the middle of the blues, like thing there. Yeah. Because you can hear the bend that he does there, and I just think that's, whether that's by design or by having good ears, that's music theory at work.
Yeah.
So you want that, especially in a two guitar band, like the Jets are a two guitar band. Yeah. And we do a lot of things, Scotty, his sound and my sound, we use different kind of amplifiers. We try to have a different tonality at the shows and on the records, so we just don't sound like a layered guitar. We actually sound like two different harmonic.
He's a nice guy.
He's a great man, very talented.
Isn't it funny? You don't hear a lot of. There's a lot of two guitar bands, but there's not a lot of intertwining sort of lines and this sort of thing. But
it takes a lot of work. That's why.
I think so, and it's such a fast, high pressure thing now. You could be well known for a year and then you're out.
That's right.
You don't have, you're on tour and you've got to keep writing. And Jimmy, I got to get you back for part 2.
Yeah.
If I don't go home to my wife's dinner party, it's Shootin the Strings 42, and that's it. ladies and gentlemen, but you'll be able to watch them. A customary handshake, sir.
Great to chat with you. Thanks for having me along.
No, thank you so much for coming in. Man, you can see Jimi Hocking everywhere. Have you got some gigs coming up this week?
Well, there's a few gigs coming up, a couple of solo gigs coming up this month. The Bay Hotel in Mordialloc, the Drunken Poet in West Melbourne, and that other place in Australia. And then at the end of this month, the Screaming Jets rehearses to start touring through August, September. So we will be doing all capital cities for our new album, which is called Gotcha Covered. It's a collection of great Australian covers as selected by radio listeners. And Boom Crash Opera are coming with us on the road. So it's Boom Crash and ourselves. So that starts first week of August.
Right.
That's 3
Do you know
weeks.
Dorian West? Do you know Dorian?
Yeah.
I wonder if he'll be back in Boom Crash. Maybe.
I don't know. I had a coffee with Maz the other day, Peter Maslin.
Oh, right.
I hung out with him, and we had a good time. So we're looking forward to being on the road and
That's cool.
and solving the troubles of the world.
Where can we buy your albums, your blues albums? Because you're not on Spotify, so
I'm
we
not on
can't.
Spotify.
Are you on iTunes?
I've taken it off iTunes and Spotify 12 months ago.
Controversial.
That is controversial. They will be back on a platform soon. You can buy them from me, obviously, or you can go to somersaultmusic.com.au, which is my good mate Gordo. He runs an online distribution company, and he can do a mail order to you for most of the blues albums that are still available. Cool. Of which I've made 15 solo albums, I believe.
There's a lot. When you go to jimihocking.com,
they're not all any good, but some of them are.
They're all excellent. Jimmy, thanks so much for coming in. Go check Jimmy out. He's probably one of the, if not the best guitar players doing the rounds in Australia at the moment. And you can see him in Elwood sometimes, in Fitzroy.
That's right. I'm
everywhere.
Around,
So it's amazing. And of course, Screaming Jets, pretty well known now.
Yeah.
Kind of big. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. We're in rock history books now.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So is he still doing the radio gigs in Adelaide?
He does them intermittently, yeah. They come and go. He had a regular show for a while there, but now he does some sort of fill-in work when it comes along. So he's still in that camp, but not as much as he was, say, 2 years ago when he had a regular show.
Groovy. There you go. Lots of comments. I will get onto this a bit later.
Should I read them, or are they saying he fudged that fast stuff pretty badly?
Awesome, Jimmy and Anthony. Great episode. There you go, from Matt Swanee, Paul James Noonan. I'll respond to them all later, and I'll put some tagging details of Jimmy's gigs in the post and all that sort of stuff. Thank you so much, man.
Pleasure.
And we're out of here, guys. See you soon. Bye.